Welcome to chapter 11 of the book of Revelation. Chapter 10 ended with John being given the scroll to eat, which the angel said would taste sweet in his mouth, but would be sour in his stomach. And in Ezekiel 3:2 and 3, it says, "And he opened wide my mouth and fed me this roll," or a scroll. "And he said to me, O son of man, your mouth shall eat, and your belly shall be filled of this roll being given to you. And I ate it, and it became in my mouth as sweet honey." It's very similar to what happened with John. In verse 1, it continues, "And was given to me a reed measure likened to a rod." Reeds were these long stalks that grew in the swampy areas, marsh areas, and they used them for different things. They used them for pens to write with, and they here used them for a measuring rod, basically a yardstick as we know it. And the angel stood saying, and that was the strong angel, "Arise and measure the temple of God and the altar and the ones doing obeisance in it." So now we are at the temple and Jerusalem, we find out, and then the angel tells him to measure the temple, the area, and the altar. And it says, "and the ones doing obeisance in it." Now, to me, this is a kind of a strange, not a strange thing, but it's something I noticed, that doing obeisance is bowing down onto the ground with your head touching the ground. The Muslims do that, but I've never seen it, heard of it being done in the temple. I asked a Jewish friend, and he didn't think that they did that. He thought they just came in and watched the sacrifices at the temple when they were doing that at the time of Jesus. So, which this whole episode sort of leads me to believe that this was some type of a occupation going on in Jerusalem, that it was not necessarily ruled. It was ruled by people that were not necessarily doing anything close to the original intent of the altar of the Old Testament. They had the ones doing obeisance. I don't know who they would be, but anyway, this area says, "And the outer courtyard of the temple put out, and do not measure it, for it was given to the nations." Well, that's not unusual, because the temple of the time of Herod had a courtyard of the Gentiles, and the same thing as the nations. It's just the difference of the King James calling them Gentiles and the word being nations. So that was not unusual, but to measure it, for that's who it was given to. "And they shall tread the holy city 42 months, 3.5 years, and who is the they shall tread?" They, the last plural, would have been the people of the nations here, to the ones of the nations. They shall tread so they're going to be in Jerusalem, and I believe they're going to run the city, not anything like the Jews of the Old Testament did. It'd be a completely different type of a rule of this holy city, it's called. We know it's Jerusalem is down here. Goes more into detail. But then it changes to this interesting episode of the two witnesses, and it says, "And I will give to my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, wearing sackcloth," the same amount, the 3.5 years, the same time period. Later it talks about the woman being in the wilderness for this 3.5 years, so maybe the Jews have left, the believing ones, I'm not sure. So these two witnesses are going to be prophesying. "And these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the Lord of the earth." Well, okay, that sounds like they're 2 olive trees and 2 lampstands. But if a Jew was reading this, it would ring a bell, our Christians today. And because in Zechariah 4, 2 and 3, it says, And he said to me, "What do you see?" And I said, "I have seen, and behold, a lampstand entirely of gold, and the oil lamp bowl upon it, and the 7 lamps upon it, and the 7 oil funnels to the 7 lamps upon it, and 2 olive trees upon it, one at the right of its oil lamp bowl, and one at the left." So we have here a lampstand, but it doesn't say 2, but it's 1. But the 2 olive trees are mentioned in Zechariah 4, 2, and 3. And then it says in Zechariah 4, 11, and 14, a little later in that same chapter, "And I responded and said to him, well, what are these 2 olive trees at the right of the lampstand and at the left?" And I asked from a second time, and I said to him, "What are these 2 branches of the olive trees, the ones by the handles of the 2 tubes of gold pouring and returning back the oil by funnels of gold?" And he spoke to me, saying, "Do you not know what these are?" And I said, "No, O Lord." He said, "Well, these are the 2 sons of the fatness. They stand before the Lord of all the earth." So now that's before the Lord of all the earth. Now, here, the Lord is the Yahweh of all the earth, Jehovah of all the earth. And then in Micah 4:13 it says, "And you shall present to the Lord their abundance, even the strength, to the Lord of all the earth." Micah 4:13. And in Zechariah 6:5 then it says, "And with the first chariot were fiery horses. These are the 4 winds of the heaven, and they go forth to stand beside the Lord of the earth." But this Lord is not Yahweh. It's a capital L, small O-R-D, the Lord, Kyrios of all the earth. It doesn't use the word Jehovah. Now, is there a different Lord of all the earth that it's talking about? And could this possibly be, as we'll see, the beast who does have a kingdom? And these 2 witnesses are coming there, standing before the Lord of the earth. Well, they're on the earth, but the Lord not standing next to the Lord. They're going through this terrible time. So it could be they're standing next to what they're calling the Lord of the earth would be the beast, because he comes here in a few verses, and we'll see his arrival. And it says, "And if anyone wants to injure them, fire goes forth from out of their mouth." So there's a negative thing there. So people apparently want to injure them a lot, would like to kill them, get rid of them, just as they did with Jesus when he was in Jerusalem. But fire goes out from out of their mouth, and it devours their enemies. And in Jeremiah 5:14, it says, "Because you spoke this word, behold, I have given my words into your mouth as fire, and this people as wood, and it shall devour them." So God has used this before, devouring the enemies with Jeremiah. "And if anyone wants to injure them, thus must he be killed." Woo. So these people that try to hurt these 2 witnesses will be killed. They must be killed. In verse 6, "These have authority to lock the heaven, that it should not rain the days of their prophecy." And this is interesting. We have rain, 2 different words. The vreki is the verb, and iatos is a noun for the rain. For it won't rain on the earth. Elijah the Tishbite, it says, and Elijah the Tishbite said in 1 Kings 17:1, "The one from out of Tishbon of Gilead to Ahab, as the Lord lives, the God of Israel, in whom I stand before him, shall there be these 3 years dew and rain? Only that unless it be through the word of my mouth." So Elijah had this power, and maybe one of these 2 men were Elijah. "And they have authority over the waters to turn them into blood." And in Exodus 4:9, it says, "And whichever water you should take from the river," Moses that is, "will be blood upon the dry land." So Moses and Elijah could very well be these 2. to strike the earth with every calamity as often as they should want, because they have done it before, and they pretty good practice at doing these things in the New Testament. And whenever they should finish their witness, here he is, the wild beast ascending from out of the abyss shall make war with them. So they are witnessed, and now this wild beast who I don't think it means ascended right here, but he has ascended from the abyss. The abyss generally has to do with water or the sea. Hades is, the abyss is the place of the dead. It would be more of a nautical type, and Hades would be more terrestrial. So this is the wild beast ascending from the abyss, the one we'll go into later in the book of Revelation, and the wild beast from the sea. And shall kill them. And their corpses, the two witnesses, will be upon the square of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where even their Lord was crucified. So we see here that the usage in the book of Revelation of other names for the city of Jerusalem. Here, Sodom and Egypt, I believe later as it goes into Babylon in the 7 hills, which Jerusalem has. When we get to there, we'll bring all that out. That Babylon is also called, Jerusalem is also called Babylon. I'll bring all the reasons why I say that out. And shall see from out of the peoples, period, plural, and tribes and languages and nations, their corpses 3 days and a half. So there's going to be these peoples that aren't Jews. They're going to be from all over the world. They're in Jerusalem, different languages, the same way as it was at the time of Acts. And their corpses, they will not allow their corpses to be put in a tomb. So they leave their bodies out there to rot. And the ones dwelling upon the earth shall rejoice over them and shall be glad, and shall send gifts to one another. For these 2 prophets tormented the ones dwelling upon the earth. So people throughout the world are going to see this and know and send gifts to one another. It's probably on TV and the internet, all over the media. And these people, it says they were tormented by these 2 witnesses that were there. So when they're gone, they're happy. Okay, it's like Jesus was died, and the people that didn't believe him were probably celebrating, having wine, and having a good time. He's gone. Now we don't have any more to worry about. But Jesus, what happened? He arose in 3 days. What happens here? And after 3 days and a half, took a little longer, a breath of life from out of God entered unto them. A pneuma is breath, spirit of life. It could be. You could use that also. It entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon the ones viewing them. And so the people viewing all over could be the world. We're seeing this. And they heard a great voice from out of the heaven saying to them, "Ascend here." And they ascended into the heaven in a cloud. What does this remind you of? It reminded me of the Matthew 27:52. John 11:43. It says, "And these things having said, with a great voice, he cried out, 'Lazarus, come outside.'" So it seems like these people that are asleep or that are dead need a loud voice to wake them up. And I don't know, maybe they can't hear very well when they're dead, but so it's a loud voice sending up here. It was a imperative, a great voice from out of heaven saying to them, "Ascend here." You would think that, well, you could just say, "Ascend here," and they would hear it. But it was loud, just as with Lazarus. And they ascended into the heaven in the cloud as Jesus, and their enemies viewed them. So instead of the disciples watching Jesus go up here, their enemies are seeing them going up in the heaven in a cloud. And in that day, a great earthquake took place, and the tent of the city fell, and were killed in the earthquake, the names of 7,000 men. And we're told in Matthew 27:52, and the earth was shaken, and the rocks split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the holy ones sleeping arose when Christ died. And the rest became thrown into fear and gave glory to the God of heaven. Well, so now some of these people do see what's going on, and they're giving glory to the God of heaven. Other places, it's towards the end, nobody wants to listen to anything from God, even after these cataclysmic events. But here in Jerusalem, they gave glory to the God of heaven. It's interesting that they did that. The second woe departed. The third woe, behold, it comes quickly. And the seventh angel trumped, and there were great voices in the heaven saying, the kingdom of the world is become of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign into the eons of the eons. The Lord Christ, one, reigning into forever and ever, eternally, aeonially, however you want to call it. The seventh trumpet. So the Lord and his Christ take reign, and then wrath takes place, and the temple of God is opened in the heaven. And we see here, and the 24 elders sitting before God upon their thrones, their crowns, fell upon their faces and did obeisance to God. So there are all these 24 thrones around the other throne, and they all get down on the ground with their faces on the earth, and probably took their crowns off, saying, we give thanks to you, O Lord God, Pantocrator. I love that word. Pan is all, and krat is might. We have a democrat, the power of the people. Demos, people, and krat, power, almighty, might. Pantocrator, the one being and the one who was and the one coming. And so this is Jesus, I believe, the one coming. The God of the Godhead is way more, but the actions generally have to do with Jesus as I see it. Now you might disagree with that. For you have taken your great power and reign. I believe Jesus is going to reign. This is what he's talking about. And the nations were angry, and your wrath came, and the time of the dead ones to be judged. So now this is sort of a something that's showing the end with the seventh trumpet, the seventh angel, and but it continues. It gives us other views of what's going on. Here is a view from John's giving us that's from earth, and to give the wage to your bondmen, the prophets. Some people have a hard time with, they think, well, we can't work our way into heaven, so we're not getting a wage. But we do get a wage to your bondmen, the prophets. It's not a reward, but it's a wage. And to the holy ones, and to the ones fearing your name. Holy ones, hopefully us, and fearing your name, which we do, to the ones small and to the ones great. Even to corrupt the ones corrupting the earth. So we are going to corrupt the ones corrupting the earth. God has got a purpose for us, and it will take place. And the temple of God was opened in the heaven. This is not in New Jerusalem. It's in the heaven somewhere where this appears and goes on. And because it says in Revelation 22 that there was no temple in New Jerusalem. And the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord was seen in his temple. I'm not sure where the last place was that the Ark of the Covenant was mentioned, but it would be a good thing to look up to see the last word that was, the last place that was ever mentioned being anywhere. It was in the tabernacle, and I believe it was David brought it into the city, the holy city, and put it in the temple. Now, if it was taken out later, hidden, I don't know. Can't remember. And there took place lightnings, sounds, and thunders, and great hail. So all this was things were happening in the heaven that John saw, and all these things were like what the children of Israel saw as they left Egypt and went into the wilderness and got to Mount Sinai. And then it continues, and a great sign appeared in the heaven, and chapter 12 now is our next video, and I hope you'll join us in chapter 12, and God bless.